that or my yes.
Watch out.
I think we're good.
There's something behind that. We can run. Maybe not. Maybe not there.
How are you doing? Huh? Yeah. Pretty so far.
See, good morning.
It's so far. My son's actually a little more proud. It's hard last year. Well, it's actually, I didn't realize that.
Thank you.
They city guys.
Yeah.
It's a great world.
So, well,
I don't know if everybody else does that, but. So I'm happy. Yeah.
let's look at your. Oh,
Yeah.
I would take that. I would take that.
Speakers.
That's too far for benchmark.
Tentatively.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. Did you see that?
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'm alive. All the works nights.
All right, we will we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. My pleasure to welcome you to Emporia State University. Diana, am I doing that right?
Serious up.
Seniors up, absolutely. Well, really appreciate that. I know all of you have put a tremendous amount of preparation to all of these Board of Regents meetings, but particularly when your campus is hosting that meeting. I know it's double the work. So thank you so much to everybody here on the Emporia State campus for hosting us and for all the prep work that goes into it. Certainly look forward to a campus visit after the meeting. So before we actually start the meeting, we have a new member of the Fiscal Affairs Committee, and I have Diana want to introduce her, as she will be the one that will be taking your seat.
Absolutely, and I'm very happy about that. Sad and happy at the same time. I have taken on a new role, and I'm Senior Vice President for University Planning and Cape War Relations. And so Angela is now interim CFO, interim Vice President for Finance and interim CFO. And so she's stepping into that chair and she's doing a fabulous job. She's formally been in that role, but we announced it on campus earlier this summer. And so Angela and I worked together for over 25 years. And so you're in great hands with her, and it was Emporia State. And I do want to echo the welcome to the campus to all of you. We're glad to have you very soon. It's a beautiful day. We ordered the weather just for you. Bill put the color in the trees. And so please enjoy your stay.
Well, thank you. We call this Chamber of Commerce weather. Yeah. But Angela, welcome to the committee. I look forward to working with you and guiding, and certainly congratulations on your new role, and thanks for all you've done for Emporia State and the board. So, all right, we will move into old business. Elaine has provided minutes from the September 20th meeting for your consideration. Any questions or discussion related to the minutes? If not, would entertain a motion to approve. Motion, Regent Dykus, second, Regent Brascom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is follow-up on issues raised during the October 31st conference call. My notes didn't indicate that we had any issues needed follow-up. Is that my recollection correct? Okay. All right, we will move into new business. First item this morning is to receive an overview of the fiscal year 2024 Board of Regents office budget. And I believe Becky Potabach is going to take care of that.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first time we're going to discuss the board office budget. You should have a memo in front of you from so it gives an overview of our budget. It's comparisons for 3 different years, and the bulk of the memo gives you a background on what our budget is composed of, how it's spent, and how it's changed over time. The higher education system receives approximately $1.1 billion state general funding, of which only $368 million comes to the Cape War agency. And then most of the funding that we receive is actually passed back out to our institutions to service institutions. Our office keeps approximately $5.2 million, which is for our operations budget. In addition to the SGF, we have funding sources from private secondary fees, administrative program fees, federal grants, such as our call for considerable adult education, and a few private grants. If you turn to page 4 of the memo, which is, I don't think numbered, but it's the budget planning summary document. This gives you an overview of our actual experiences since the previous 2 years and our plan for this year, broken down by both funding source and expense type. You will note on there that we did have an increase this past year on both maintenance and repair and capital outlay, and that's mostly due to all the remodeling that we did with council space, and so that was an independent cost. And then one other item you may note is there was an increase in salary and wages, but that is due to several things, including increases, raises, and then we have had some additional staff. Our agency does have 58 full-time staff, which is spread across the agency. The next page in that memo is our organizational chart, which shows our different departments and different areas where our people are spread out. At this time, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Any discussion, any questions from the regents?
I have a question on the total amount for budget plans for 2024 is a little less than past years.
Yeah, that is correct. So we had some additional other fees and private grants in that made some changes, and then we used a little more private post-secondary fees. a lot of that extra spending last year was through. So we got, I'm probably really to know that we had a significant cost for how much the model cost was. So or other,
We are comparing it mostly against 2022 then,
yes.
the 2024.
Yeah,
Got it. Thank you, ma'am.
Is the increase in the staff salaries and wages line sustainable at the any increases since 22?
it is sustainable if we continue to get funding for raises.
But we do, as a state agency, we participate in the state employee pay plan. And we are going to be seeking some additional state funding for our staff salaries for our particular agency, specific to making some very targeted market adjustments for our staff. We have to compete not only with the universities who, I won't say steal, but do tend to move on to campuses. So we compete with not only other state agencies that are in market adjustment pays rates that we didn't get to participate in. So hopefully we're going to be adjusted.
We're doing a study right now.
Yeah.
And I have one more question.
No,
The federal grants, I don't see any plan this year.
that's the other federal grants. So
Yeah.
the other federal grants is the urban, their money, and we don't.
We finished our year 2 grant just at the very end of September. Don't expect more COVID money.
And our urban money is all passed now. So what we do have some this year is all passed through our agency, and so it doesn't count.
Any other discussion, any questions related to Becky's information that she's provided? Would entertain a motion to recommend approval. So moved. Okay, moved by Regent Winter. Second by Regent Dicus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Becky, I believe you're also up for the receiving the K-Board internal audit for alumni account.
That's correct. So we have an alumni account, which is held with the KU endowment. It is funded through contributions from the state universities and is used to support the board's different activities and functions such as the annual retreat, or annual legislation retreat, and the usage of this account is managed by myself and one other employee at our agency. Kitty Mars, who is our associate director of accounting, does not have a use of this account side plans, and she conducts the audit, which she has conducted for this year, and she has determined that there was no discrepancies in the account.
Those are good results to get from an audit.
Did you say the person who's doing the audit is within the system?
So she is with our agency, so she is a Kansas Board of Education
Got it.
county director, but she has nothing to do with this account, and it doesn't actually flow through the school system.
Thank you, Beck. All right, any other discussion related to the audit? We need to approve that.
If you would like to.
Okay, doesn't hurt. Would entertain a motion that we accept the audit as presented. Moved by Regent Dicus. Second by Regent Trasker. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will now move to item C. Review quite a few board agenda items under fiscal affairs. Believe the first one, yeah, correct.
Yes, we
Okay.
can start on page 38.
Okay.
The board materials.
Act on request to raise buildings and approve allocation of fiscal year 2024 building demolition fund for Brennan Halls 1, 2, and 3 at Wichita State. I have Chad is going to cover those for us. Chad, it's your turn.
Yeah, if you'd like.
Yeah, consent item number one on page 38 is, as it says, a request to raise 3 halls, Brennan 1, 2, 3 at Wichita State, and to request an allocation from the building demolition funds to do so. I can go into detail, but all the amounts there are spelled out in the paragraph. I don't know if Brother Werner has anything to add to that.
We will be happy to that.
Well said.
I would just add, this has been a priority ever since the exception of the building demolition fund. So I think you're prioritizing it now, but it has been on the longer.
Is the demolition fund, money from last year, a first come, first served basis for the universities, but whoever gets their request in first seem to have a lot of buildings that or shouldn't be. So they're at the mercy of when they get their request.
First come, first serve, it would be a good way to characterize it. I would say though, there has been some coordination between the universities, just, who's ready, and I would say that it's a collegial kind of coordination, rather than indifference to, yeah.
And this falls in our Paul. We've coordinated that, I think, for the last 2 years.
Any other discussion on that item?
I have a quick question on, when you say deferred maintenance backlog, $3,607,000 and change, is it for a particular time frame we're talking about? Is it for a year?
The reason for asking so the 3.6 million in estimated deferred maintenance backlog for that Brennan Hall number 1 is referencing an estimate that we have developed data for. We work with a consultant, Gordian, who has a database system that the university subscribes to, and each building that has a full assessment, which is about half of our buildings, this being one, breaks out by building system and estimated costs for replacement of that system and for cost to refurbish or renew or revitalize the system. This number here, it basically quantifies the needs that this building has in terms of the systems that it was constructed with. And then he also looks out into the future for 5 years and says, okay, in the next 5 years, what are the maintenance needs or the building system renewal needs that we expect per cost? And it ties it to RS means construction cost data, which is a widely recognized building cost data system. And it's adjusted for our locale. And so then that's the number you get in total all of that up.
Related to that item. Well, backing up just a little bit, in the interest of time, given that these are consent agenda items and all of them but one, which is item number 10, that I'll ask them to elaborate on in just a moment. Given that all the other items on the consent agenda were discussed during our conference call a couple of weeks ago, they just asked the regions if there are any of the consent agenda items that you need more information you'd like to discuss. Otherwise, we may just do that as a consent agenda and move on to discussion items. So,
Who did we approve?
okay, hold up for just a minute. I'm going to ask, thank you, but we'll ask Doug Ball. The one item 10, was new since our conference call. Doug, can you speak on that item?
You bet. This item results from ongoing discussions we've been having ADI about facilities in the Pittsburgh area. We've been in discussions with them both about a long-term strategy. They're seeking funding to build a facility for their long-term needs. They also have short-term needs. That current facilities aren't sufficient for their operations. So we've been working to find some options that might be available on campus to provide for those short-term needs. A solution to that fell into place quite recently. They're interested in leasing some space in our Tyler Research Center building. And that's a portion of their operations as an interim home until the long-term facility is put into place. And so the terms and conditions of that were all put into place after the submission for approval. If they're anxious to move quickly, we can move into that space relatively easily with minor changes. And so we're seeking for listening to started on that. So,
any questions for Doug? Yes, Regent Winter.
Good morning, Doug. Is all of the expense for this project in the KPI budget, or put differently, will the campus have to incur any expenses with respect to this project?
we will not incur any expenses other than a few minor things that KBI is going to reimburse us for.
Okay.
So we got some minor moving costs there, minimal, but they are going to
Right.
for those costs.
Any other questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. All right, I believe we have a motion from Regent Dykens to approve the consent agenda as presented. Would entertain a second. Second by Regent Brasker. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. All right, we will move on to the discussion agenda items for this afternoon's meeting. First of all, receive the fiscal year 2025 housing and food service rate adjustment proposals submitted by the State University, the State Read. And I'll turn it over to Elaine Frisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So starting on page 99 and then going on for a number of pages, as a reminder to 126, are the campus's proposals for next year's housing and food service rate proposals for the coming year. So not this year, the coming year. And this then helps them lay their plans out for the subsequent fiscal year. There's similar information. Some of them are lengthier, more complex, depending on the scale of their operations. But in the back of each proposal is a snapshot of the financials for each of the enterprise units. The housing and food service functions within each campus are considered an auxiliary enterprise. So this is not part of the general use educational function of the campus. This is to be intended to be a self-supporting separate unit. And we have work policy specific to their being self-supported. And so you get a snapshot for where they are experiencing some revenue losses and capital improvement expenses, and if they have debt on any housing buildings, long-term debt outstanding, and what capital improvements are noted at the bottom of those pages, so you get a sense for where they are, a snapshot in time for their projections for the coming year. And I think, Mr. Chairman, then we would go through and have each campus run through their proposal.
Okay, absolutely. Good idea.
And you would be up first. Starting on page 101.
With you, Elaine, committee, our proposed increase both housing and dining is for most areas 3%. There's some apartments we have a 3%. There's one dining plan, which is kind of a cash dining plan that we don't have any increases on. But in general, it's a 5% request for housing and dining. These two areas are, as Elaine mentioned, are auxiliaries. And the fundamental assumption in the university's financial plan is that these remain self-sustaining. And that is increasingly becoming a challenge given the capital needs that these entities have. Particularly, we're looking at possibly needing to build a new residence hall, either at some point because of a number of our Jayhawk towers, B and C, are looking at being torn down and demolished at some point. We've taken down Oliver. And we've had some fairly significant growth in enrollment, particularly out-of-state enrollment. They really like to stay on housing and they tend to stay there longer. So we've been looking at all those issues. And on the union side, they're at the point where their central plant that heats and cools the building and their dining equipment is at the end of its life and needs to be replaced as well. So we have been going through large efforts. I've been spending a lot of time with JJ Cran and Sarah Waters are in the audience here, the directors of those two areas.
They had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with the CFO. I'm not sure if I see it that way. But in terms of trying to figure out how we deal with the capital, we deal with things like our professional staff at the dining are 11% below the Lawrence market in terms of their pay. And then you have the issues of things like the cost of inflation on the food that we're buying and all the supply contracts we've had to do. So we took a really hard look at what do we need to do to sustain it while we figure out this capital program. And there's going to be a big effort in the coming months. We've engaged consultants and modeling and scenario planning, all these types of things. 5% is the number that we believe still stays competitive in the market, and that's the kind of increases students are seeing if they're living off campus as well. It still keeps us in a reasonable competitive area, and it gets us more stable while we figure all this out. You'll see on page 105 that we're drawing our days on cash on hand for the housing area from 82 to 60, which is we don't want to go below 60. So we're using our reserves to try to keep it affordable. We're working through to figure out all these solutions. And there's a lot of things we've been doing the last year. For example, dining used to do an external IT contract. They've insourced it to the university where they can eliminate the cost of that contract. We are pursuing alternative revenue strategies with conference and events, which is going to have a huge assistance to housing and dining, the revenue they'll get out of conference and events. We have looked at things that if you have anybody in your family that's a millennial, they don't buy cable anymore. They do streaming. Well, the cable contracts has been eliminated. We've renegotiated our delivery services contracts with Amazon. We've looked at all our contracts we have out there to try to make sure we reduce the number of SKUs that we order for food to try to get higher volume to get better discounts. So we're looking at all those things to get affordable, but the real issue with housing and dining is coming up with a sustainable long-term plan that deals with capital as well. So the increase we're requesting, we feel is, and the students have reviewed it. You can see that right up in there about the student reviews, and Sarah can talk about, or JJ can talk about that review. I think there's an understanding we need to do this because of the maintenance issues we're challenged with and the other things that I mentioned. So this is, I think, the responsible level. It's okay to use reserves. We figure it out, but we can't keep doing that. And we need a bigger long-term strategy, which I think is on the horizon. This keeps us stable while we get all that housing challenges and dining. And all of us, I think you're going to hear the same message. All of us on the dining side we're impacted by COVID. We're recovering from. We're a restaurant. That's probably one of the hardest hit areas of the COVID era that we're recovering from, and we're all dealing with maintenance, and we're all dealing with labor. We don't compete. We don't compete with each other on labor. We compete with the local kitchen and dining, with the local restaurant industry, and we're below that. So that's the reason for our request and all the actions we've been trying to take to minimize that.
We appreciate that. Questions, discussion related to KU's Regent Wood.
Good morning. I'm looking at page 105, and you touched on the issue that I had in my mind, that is balances. The trend here in actual 23 projected in with 10 million and slightly less than 9 and slightly less than 7. That trend, of course, is not sustainable to continue. What's the plan to cease that using those balances and stabilizing income versus expenditures?
Well, one of those is that conference and events initiative, which will be an alternative revenue generator that will reduce that. And I think that's the reason why we're going through this very intense long range, called 5 to 10 year financial and capital plan, not just the operating side, but the capital side too, because I don't want it to go below that. So we're going to need to have strategies and look at what we're doing. And I think the 5% keeps us stable while we get there. But that trend, as you just pointed out, you need to get that going the other way. And I think we have strategies that we're going through in terms of some of the things I talked about, cost control and the alternative revenue sources, and looking at, where we place our students and how we use our housing. We had an all-day or half a day workshop earlier Monday discussing that very issue that you just asked. So we're going to put together a plan.
What do you see as the primary element of that plan? I know I heard you say it's in process, et cetera, et cetera. What one or two items is, strategies, tactics, are going to be the most important to turn this around.
I think it goes for KU as well as it goes for housing and dining, is looking at alternative ways of running the business and looking at alternative revenue generation. You can't keep putting it on the back of tuition. You can't hope the state comes in and pulls us out of that. So there's substantial opportunities, and the project that's on the agenda later, the Gateway project, has a conference and events element to it that is also built into. If you have conferences and events, they're going to be using our housing facilities, bringing in revenue. It's not student revenue. So that's the strategies that we're looking at and quantifying the impact of that and timing of that. The challenge is the capital side, though, to be candid, is figuring out how we work creatively to get capital into housing and the dining that makes this trend go positive as well.
Assume for a second that you have a plan for 2025 that held cash balances the same, but that you were not eating into cash balances. What would that be with respect to the percentage increase that we see? Currently 5% for this.
Yeah, I'd have to calculate that, but just looking at ballpark, it'd probably be in the 10 to 15% range, which is now you're weighing that market impact and student retention with, using cash on hand. So, but we're generating about 1.9 from the 5, and you look at that difference, it's 3 million. So it's going to be the 10% range, which I don't think that would help us with our student retention improvement.
Yeah, I think reinforce your background.
Oh, there, thank you.
I'm going to help with that,
Yeah,
because I think one of the critical things that is not directly in our proposal is in FY25, Lewis Hall will be closed for renovation. So $2 million of revenue is removed, that was in our FY24. And with the Lewis revenue in that $2 million, I'm speaking about our director student costs.
Thank you for stepping in. You bring to the rescue.
Yeah, well, no, he's great. This is my job to make all the details. And so if I know that we had done a calculation of the Lewis revenue in that brought our cash balance, it would have been 71 days. So we're still short of where we are for 82, and we certainly want to bring that up. But we've been careful about as well, of course, with revenue as well as expense.
And I think 60 is where you want to be, not below. But really, to do the capital we need to do, we need to be well above that to fund the capital. So we probably should be in 90 days to fund the capital. But the point Sarah made that I didn't mention, the missed is you look at the footnote at the bottom of that page. The Lewis Hall revenue is lost because it's closed, and you bring that back in, you get back up to 72 days, 71 days. But it is, we gotta watch this closely, I think, is your point. And we'll take in our strategy to look at that. We need 60 as a minimum operating number, but when you're trying to do funding capital, you need to be above.
Well, just so you know that I'm not grinding too much on this, I admire the fact that, as you said, you're really looking at student success and student fees and student cost and access issues. But that's very important. If anything's going to guide us in general in our work, it's improving student access and student success. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
That's a big
We
one.
just kind of have a question then for all of you to think about, in the overall student affordability, how do you factor in what you can do here from a housing standpoint into the tuition discussions, and vice versa, so that we keep the affordability and the annual increases to a level that is sustainable and can increase the student population.
And to echo that, I would just ask that as each of you discuss your proposed increase, please tell us how you are minimizing those increases, because we do talk a lot about affordability, student affordability, and certainly understand the inflationary pressure that you're under. But I think it's helpful to know not only the steps you're taking, but also holding your service providers accountable to make sure that their cost increases are minimal as well. So any other discussion or questions related to KU's proposal?
Yeah. So maybe this is already discussed. I have no questions about the list. I'm good with it. I've observed that we are estimated increase in revenue for about $12 million from 2023 to 2024. But our cost has gone up significantly on the operating expense. If this was my balance sheet, I would really get.
Yes, and some of that is we had to do a lot of leasing last year. The board approved of areas where we're not making a profit at the moment. So because of our record class, we had to go lease Naismith and some other apartment units that we're taking a little bit of a big increase on while we get it stabilized. So some of that you're seeing, and Sarah may have some other explanations there, but a lot of that is big jump is the leases we had to do. We tried everything to grow our enrollment and it grew faster than we expected it to do, and we had to address that. And we're getting that stabilized going forward. So you'll see that as part of that whole discussion of the strategic plan is keeping that where you can't keep it, you can't sustain that.
Right.
And so that's kind of a one-time in the year due to the leases.
For 2024, but I don't see much improvement in 2025.
We're leasing more. So as we get this, and so it's one of the things that we're gonna have to look longer term is we're gonna probably need to build something, and we're gonna need to work on the capital side, and so the quick growth we had, fast growth does not necessarily generate net revenue. It does on the university side, but it didn't on the housing side. So it's getting that stabilizing and the leases negotiated going forward and getting that stabilized. That's what you're seeing. You're also seeing in both housing and dining, I think we'll see this in all of us, the impact of post-COVID as all these things are coming in, and the inflation has been really heavy the last few years. We're just not getting caught up to it.
So my question,
But inflation's down now, so I think you're going to see it stable.
what's the point in bringing revenue when we are losing money?
It's a great question. So on the housing side, I think that you'll start to see, again, what you're seeing here is you're seeing Lewis offline. You're seeing one of our residents all that generates money is offline. So if you're reading the U of A stories out there, and I'm sure you all are, you got to be really careful that your growth is generating net revenue. For KU it is really helping us get through this. On the housing side, we're behind in catching.
Got it. Thank you.
Dining is positive for dining, because you got more people.
Yes.
Sure. Housing is for, it's taking a negative hit and short.
Any other questions, discussion related to the KU proposal? We lost.
We lost Ethan's new cops, the Council of Presidents, so he has to go give his report that we can skip over.
Okay.
He'll be back.
It'll just deny
Go to Wichita State.
Yes, good morning, Regents. Our proposal starts on page 12. Generally, we face the same issues at the universities. We do have newer residence halls. Our oldest is Shocker Hall, which was opened in 2014. So instead of tackling currently, we build out our debt and maintenance reserves. We do basically that will have resources of that. We look through our proposal. Our highest proposal is increase. Those increases are around 3%. Much of that is driven by the truck rails, which has a 3% escalator. So we are fortunate that with our contract with the escalator, things that we do that will be significantly higher. I suspect that some of my colleagues are out in the marketplace for sure. So we're very fortunate. And we're keeping the same philosophy as we did last year. That our singles, which are our highest demand, and individuals that both of those have the ability to pay, those are increased at 3%. Then we have a doubles and some of the others that are at approximately 2% increase. And then to address the affordability issue, this is the second year in a row where we haven't which that triples shop right now, for example. So keeping them priced low to help those students that need to want campus that need to be researched. And so that's we received our student feedback and our forms, and that's on page 115. And we're fortunate that our occupancy rates have remained high. That's on page 116. They have been high and have remained high for fiscal year 23. We're going to be about 202%. And we're anticipating next year.
How long is that 3% locked in?
2027. Yeah, we could get some kind of extension.
That's good contract. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
We actually negotiated that right. So very fortunate.
Smart insights.
Yeah,
good timing.
luck timing.
Right time.
But yeah, we're very fortunate. And Trump was actually very so.
Questions for Warner related to the Wichita State proposal? Done. We'll move into Fort Hays State and Wesley.
Thank you, Regent Benson, and starts on page 117. For Fort Hays State, we're dealing with many of the same challenges that are what you've heard. I won't rehash the inflationary and the pieces of that we're doing. I will tell you some of the things that we're doing to help keep costs low, that are specific to us. There are some things we're doing with utilities. We're making utility rates low by installing in rooms where it kicks on when there's people there and the air exchange that don't happen when you're vacant. So there's some things. We also changed out hand soap, for example. We were realizing that the hand soap dispensers that we had, we were buying a product that was much more expensive than we could get if we switched them out. So we switched out all the bathrooms, and now we're buying hand soap for less cost. We do those types of things. Regularly, we're always looking for ways to do it. Right now, our prices for next year, we're requesting 3.5% increase, 3.5% for dining, 3.5% for housing. And this was done in connection with my director for housing and VP for Student Affairs. We sit around, we talk about it, we engage students, we have the Residence Hall Association, we talk to about this. We take a look also at the market in town, what the housing rates are going up for rentals near the university, and still very much in line with what the market rates are. We don't think we'll get out of market on that. Our occupancy rate this year is up from last year with 92%. That's very good for us, and to go that way. In regard to capital projects coming forward, we have a number of them coming down the road. Roofs, bathroom, floor tiling, some card access that we're trying to put in buildings. But we have a really big one that's coming down the road here that's just barely off of the schedule. You can see, we need to replace the electrical system in the finest hall, which is one of our biggest halls. Electrical, the wiring of the walls and everything. That's going to take multiple years. We're estimating it's about a $9 million project that's coming, and we know it's coming. So part of what we're trying to do is make sure that our reserves are big enough to handle that as a year-by-year project. It'll probably be a 5 or 6 year project that we do one wing at a time, and probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million a year. 5 or 6 years. Obviously, that's not approved yet. It's not. We haven't been to you guys, but just so you can kind of understand why we might have a $5 million reserve balance, which is maybe higher than we might see. It's because we're planning for that. And build for that. So
There's a timeline on that.
Yeah, probably 26 get started. And then it would probably be 5 or 6 years the actual time goes out. The other thing I did want to mention to this committee is that we are one. Warner mentioned the food service contract. Our food service contract expired is done in July of this year. So we are currently actively seeking an RFP for food service. The 3.5% that we are asking on that is based off history and our current food service provider, who has signaled that might be something that would be within range. However, you never know until you actually get the actual food service RFP back. So that will probably be back to us in February. And if it comes back extremely higher than we anticipate, I hope it doesn't. And if it does, we may have to work this a little bit, signaling that may be the case. But for now, this is what we're asking.
Questions for Wesley? Thank you. Employee State, welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce the experts in the room. So if there's questions. Diana Coleman is, like she said earlier, senior for University Planning, Senior Vice President of University Planning and Labor Relations. We also have Kayla Smith on the end. She is our Director for Residence Life. And then Cass Coughlin, who has probably the longest title on campus right now, as Interim Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success and Dean of Students. ESU is formally requesting an overall increase of a little over 4% for our housing and our meal rates for next academic year. We are not increasing our residence hall rates. Studies have shown that living on campus often fosters a sense of community and engagement among students, making them more successful. In addition, housing costs in Emporia are either low cost but not in good condition, or newer apartments which are nice but are priced at the higher end. So our residence halls currently offer rates right in the middle and provide a safe and convenient place for our students to be. Last year, we also offered a second-year discount incentive to live on campus, which has been successful in increasing that population. So we plan to continue that next year. While not increasing housing rates keeps our residence hall more affordable, it will be challenging. Our finances for the hall systems, however, will be stable with some additional assistance from the university. We are proposing an increase on our meal rates. That total dollar to students will be about $408 for the next academic year. When we asked our students what they wanted to see, they wanted to see a better dining experience. But like everybody else has said, we've experienced high increases in our food cost, which is over 7% for us because our current contract was at CPI, so 7%. In addition to labor pressures, obviously, that everybody has that is making staffing difficult. In addition, we are in the process of looking for a new student service provider. And as we've been talking to others, we know that this process is not easy and probably will not result in a reduction of our cost. So in summary, our proposal will increase our overall cost to our students by $408 next year, but will help us to meet the expectations of our students while we work on stabilizing and increasing our on-campus.
So, the question I had is on the meal plans, they have an option to take it or not.
They do.
So this price of actually scaring them off.
This price, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So again, everybody's Cass. So as part of our housing contract, the meal plan is required. For new students, they select from two different plans, the all access or the 15 block. And then returning students can select the lower price, which I think is called 50 block. Or 60 block. 65, sorry. And so, but if students live on campus, yes, they do have to have a meal plan. One of them is feedback from students over the course of years. And so this will be our second or third year with the 65 blocks. This will be the third year. That was a point of feedback from our returning students as they wanted to have something that they could have, because we don't have any apartment style housing. All of our halls are very traditional style with kitchens. So there are options for them to prepare their own food, but we want to have that food security.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion related to the Emporia State proposal? Thank you, Angela. We rejected the the K-State proposal. One motion by Regent Dykes.
I knew I was nervous coming back in here.
I'll give you one more shot.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to, one more time to come back.
Generally, there's a big unanimous vote.
Right. Thank you. Our story is probably fairly similar to what you did hear from all the other institutions is inflationary impacts continue to really hammer our operations, both from operating the residence halls as well as the dining facilities. And so seeing significant increases in our utility rates proposed by the different entities. Labor is also a big impact for us. What we've had to do to be able to compete with the local labor market to be able to operate our dining center has required us to really significantly raise hourly rates for a lot of those individuals, just so that we can continue to operate our dining center. So just a quick reminder, Manhattan is a self-operated dining center. We don't contract that out. So we are constantly looking at that local labor market to understand how do we keep operations moving. Food costs, we spend about $3 million a year on local food. So just a few increases that we've seen just within the last year. Butter has gone up 27%, ham has gone up 7.9%. So you have some really large commodities that you're using in your operations that have seen some fairly steep price increases. So you might ask, okay, well, what are we doing to make sure that we're trying to keep costs down? We continue to keep our strong complex offline. That saves about $1.3 million a year. You will notice there is a project in there to come back and do some renovations in that, but re-envision kind of what that strong complex can do in relation to our strategic plan and our plan for enrollment growth in the future years. We also look at, in essence, Derek Jackson, our director of housing, who's also behind us, and his business officer, just about every purchase that comes through there to make sure, is this needed? Do we actually have to have it? And they also keep a lot of the positions, except for frontline positions, they keep a lot of those open. The other thing that has been happening the last couple of years, which is really unsustainable, is we've held off on a lot of capital improvement projects or maintenance projects for the facilities. If you look at the financial pro forma, you'll notice we've kept those pretty low the last several years. It's obviously unsustainable, and so we need to sort of ramping that back up to keep our facilities in optimal order. So those are some of the major drivers behind this year's rate.
The questions related to the K-State proposal.
There's a 2-digit increase for 3-person private suite.
And I think, and I'll let me Derek answer that. Is that in relation to keeping up with the local market for?
Yeah, so one of the dynamics in our market, we try to do dynamic pricing based on demand requests. So our more premium rooms actually are at our highest point of selection. So we raise those rates a little higher than the more common 2-person rooms that are more normal. We try to keep those rates down, and we have to make adjustments on that as we go throughout based on sort of the demand pressures and working with the market. And off-campus market is significantly higher price than we are. So we're in tune to where we're at price point. We don't have, an overabundance of, residence halls off campus to compete with, but we try to market. Our students tell us with their feet, right? Where are they going to go? What price points they can want to, and our families do as well. And so it's been a kind of an ebb and flow as we look at each, because we have 40 different unit types, right? 1-person suites, 1-person privates. I mean, it just the market's all out. So we watch the price, demand elasticity, I guess, is the marketing phrase that we use in our office to say what are the price points that our students are willing to pay, that have maybe more ability to pay to match that need.
My only concern is, I'm assuming more of the low-income families choose for the 3%.
They actually don't. More and more choose the 2-person rooms. We have very few 3-person rooms as well. So that's part of the uniqueness of some of our private
we just don't have very many of them. And so we're trying to match those into the market, based on the demand.
If there are any renovations been done in Boyd or Putnam?
So Boyd and Putnam are on your docket now to be able, so those are historic buildings built in the 50s as well as Van Zyl built in the 20s. We've got a $32 million project to renovate those coming into this next year. We'll begin the process with approval, obviously. Architects in the spring, start the renovation of Boyd next fall, flip it and do Putnam the following year. And so we'll, in a 2-year window of time, 2.5-year window of time, we'll have those buildings up to date, renovated, and meeting the academic standards that we are looking for in this project.
I mean, even though it's a 13% increase, it's still the same price as the other buildings that have a 3% private suite. So it's just kind of bringing them up.
That's right.
I didn't know whether they something nicer.
Not at the moment, but we're headed into that game.
Historic, I'm sorry, you don't mean historic, they're just older. They're not designated by.
No, we can ask for it. We only have one of those.
We could call them older if we like to use that word, but they're very state. You've been on our campus, so beautiful architecture, native limestone, and a high affinity from our students.
Like Ned and I were historic.
Yeah, well, I am.
Richard Winter, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the trends in housing and in enrollment for housing and food compared with pre-COVID. Just a quick, is going up, stabilize, what's happening now that COVID is behind us?
So one of the major policy changes that we made after the pandemic is requiring all freshmen to live on campus in a residence home. Now, we did that from a student success lens, not from an operational lens for the housing and dining system. I want to make sure we're clear on that. There was not an attempt to add the books there. But we think from a student success perspective, that is, and there is a lot of research that supports that practice. That if you live in a residence hall, you have a much higher likelihood of retaining, and see ultimately whatever. So we made a big policy change, Region Winter, over that period of time. And so that has helped increase participation in living on campus.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions related to the K-State proposal? No, Pittsburgh State.
Yes, Pittsburgh State, and I have to say, Jeff really burst my bubble earlier because I was convinced that everyone's meeting with the CFO was the highlight of their week. Those two of us. Well, at Pittsburgh State, our request is for an increase for the core residence hall, dining, room and board plan that ranges from 5.4% to 6%. And so that is a bit larger than we have historically had. Much of the reasoning is consistent with some of the other stories, but we've got a slight variation on that in that we've recently completed a rebid of our dining services and have a new dining services provider. That is the biggest driver of cost increases that the that RFP process began really more than a year ago as President Shipp visited with students as he was new to campus. One of the highlights that came out of those sessions was very clear feedback that our dining services needed some attention. So feedback from that source and other sources that we gathered feedback from really rose dining to the top of the agenda in terms of areas to focus on. And so we started an RFP process last spring, had a committee put together that included not only members of the housing and dining staff, but we included a number of students very intentionally to be active participants in the process. They were very instrumental in kind of guiding us through that process, both in highlighting what their priorities were, what their areas of focus were, and reviewing all of the companies who bid on that RFP process, reviewing their proposals and kind of making their recommendations on the direction we should head. And so we did select a new provider. They started this summer, and that came with a cost increase, a fairly significant cost increase. students who were part of the committee helped us kind of make that choice about what was the right place to be in terms of providing the level of service priorities that they wanted, but while balancing that with the best cost we could get under those circumstances. So that's the biggest driver of our request, and the biggest driver of cost increases we've seen that we're seeking to rates to accommodate. There are others. Utilities have been notably up over the past year, and so that's a particularly big driver as well. Benefit costs are notable as well, but they will frankly pay more in comparison to the increasing value costs. On the cost management side, I will say our housing team has been active and effective in trying to manage both cost and revenues and manage their activities. Many of the same things you've heard before. You guys mentioned cable earlier. That's something we did a couple of years ago that was a big cost saver. They are carefully managing their staff, both in the positions we fill. Organize those. That's helped to save some money as well. They've also been active in the revenue side. During COVID, one of the things we did was really increase the number of single room options that were available to students. That's been very successful, more successful than I thought it was going to be. We've got the capacity to do that. So that's both meeting student interest, right, where they want that option for a single room. That generates revenue for us and that. So it's been relatively successful. One additional component that's part of this request as well, that's maybe a bit more of a longer term thing, is the need to reinvest more in maintenance of our housing facilities. During COVID, we constrained some of the maintenance projects as they focused on just operating, surviving the pandemic. And so we're now at a place where we need to ramp those maintenance projects back up and do more of them. And so the request we've made really isn't enough to do everything we need to do in that area. But we want to take the first step, right? Take an additional step down that path and begin to ramp up maintenance spending a bit higher. We also are going to spend down reserves modestly. We've been able to get reserves up to high enough level that this year and next we're planning to spend down small portions of that while still maintaining the goal to increase those maintenance projects. But that'll be our long-term goal to address and focus on.
Well, and we've heard this morning several times mentioned of engaging students, particularly with dining considerations, and really I applaud you for that. Because ultimately, students and their families are going to be paying additional costs. So the fact that you involve them in the conversation and are supportive of it is important to know. Any questions or discussions related to Pittsburgh State proposal? All right. Thank you all for that information. This is the first reading only for the November meeting, and we will come back in ask for action at the December meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, in case any of the committee members are confused, I would just point out that KU Medical Center has been managing its costs of housing and dining very carefully, and we are here.
Oh man, it's well said. All right, Regent Winter.
In other words, your housing is so inadequate that no. I just wanted.
Okay, all right. Okay,
yes,
yeah. Okay, sounds good. No, it's good discussion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to applaud all of you. The managing housing and food in this inflationary environment must be extremely challenging. So I just want to thank all of you, probably mostly folks not sitting here at the table, for keeping an eye on all of that and helping us keep those costs low and recognizing that student success is our top priority. And it's hard to be successful if students can't afford it. Thank you.
Well said.
I will rescind my motion of earlier.
K-State's back in. Good job. Yeah. All right.
Who's monitoring the food? There's two chats.
Those were chats for me, just making sure I'm staying here.
Job here, we
Yes.
looking after the chats. All right, we will move on to item number 2. Act on request for changes to appropriation language for the fiscal year 2025 budget. Delayed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So starting on page 127 through to 130, top of 131. These are items where we're getting deep into the weeds of the state budget process. And these are items arising from staff who work deeply with the appropriation process. And we just like to best leverage the state funding that we've received. And we want the best language attached to those provisos. Legislators take different approaches with provisos. Some, mostly attorneys, revile and state that we have provisos at all. They think anything such as what you see on page 127 should be in a substantive bill. Others would argue the budget process, it goes along through the same legislative process as anything else, and it's perfectly fine to have these provisos. To the extent that we do have provisos and we must live with them when we do receive those dollars, and we must administer the funding with the dollars, we do like to make proposals for how those should be worded. And you'll see there on the pages that I've noted, these are our suggestions. Number 1 is a repeat from this year with the 23 session did for us, as is number 2. So these are kind of repeats of the same theme. Item 3 is just to ensure that the board and the TEA have oversight of how state aid is handled for the 2-year colleges. Last year, some very specific dollar amounts for each college was inserted in the appropriation bill, which ultimately was fine because they used our numbers. But according to the statute, that authority should reside with the board of regents. So we just like to tack to that rather than to the legislature doing that. And we had some complications with some funding for career and tech ed outlay where we had 3 pots of money and each of them had different rules and it got quite confusing and messy. So we just like to clean that up. We have a HERO scholarship, which the legislature created. We do administer a number of state financial aid programs. We administer them for students, but they are state programs. And there's a mismatch between what the statute says we can spend for the program and what the budget says we can spend the program. So we like to make sure we can spend as much as we need to for that program so that we reimburse the schools who have eligible people attend their schools. Because the universities and the colleges cannot charge tuition to those students. So we want to cover those expenses. And then lastly, we've got item 6. This is relatively new. Since 2000, we've had the Kansas Partnership for Faculty of Distinction. And over time, we have received $264 million in certified gifts for this program. This is a partnership between the state and donors and universities. And we have now finally reached a point where we're going to hit up against the statutory cap on how much the state will match. And that's a combination of the interest rates that have been higher more recently and the cumulative gift activity. And this is not only the state universities, it also involves several community colleges and Washburn University. And we just want, while we sort out this program relative to the board's potential initiative for a new research initiative in the budget, it was in the budget for a time. In the September meeting, we said, let's deal with that in a separate bill. So Adam York is going to talk to you about a separate research initiative. But while we figure that out, let's keep this going at pace so that for certified donations, certified gifts, let's keep making that match. So let us go above the $8 million threshold. That's essentially what that's. And that's really all that we have there on the provider.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. Questions related to information that Elaine just ran through? There are no questions or discussion. We're going to entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Regent Winter, second by Regent Dicus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Elaine. Right, item 3, act on request to revise tuition rate for the School of Pharmacy at KU. Did you cover that, Jake?
Yes, one of the challenges in pharmacy schools across the country are there's a lot more schools and a lot less students going to pharmacy. And one of the things that we've looked at is our competitive in recruiting out-of-state students. Our rate is not competitive. So the proposal is to drop the out-of-state rate. In-state rate will stay where it is because it is competitive. But the out-of-state rate, dropping it down than the in-state rate will put us in a competitive position against other states to help us better recruit. And the reason why we're asking this kind of off cycle is we need to start that recruiting process in the very near future. So we're asking for this now. So in January, we can send out materials and focus our efforts on out-of-state recruitment for the school.
Moved by Regent Dicus,
I can say it.
second by Regent Brasker. Any further discussion?
How many, I'm sorry,
Yes, go ahead.
how many students are we talking about roughly?
A few 150 in that. It's not the school's like 400 if I'm off the top of my head. So it's not a lot of students, but it is. We've been losing enrollment in the past few years because of the number of schools opening up, and we got to find a way to do that. So it's a few.
There is a market need for pharmacy.
Right.
Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any? We can hear it. All right, act on request to restructure certain all-inclusive tuition rates. Yeah.
So this is a similar request is we have a large number of different rates that we have, and we're building into the online architect and master's program. So what we're doing is we're proposing this tier of rates that a particular academic unit would need to look at their cost of instruction and fit into one of these rates instead of letting everybody have a $2, $3 different. So simplicity, transparency, and ability to pivot quickly and to market better is the reason for this.
We discussed this previously.
Makes sense. Okay. Moved by Regent Dicus, second by Regent Brasker. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Staying with KU, item 5, act on request to establish a new non-standard tuition rate for Summer Master of Music Education program.
So this is one you can see the significant drop. And as we've looked at this, this is a major recruiting tool for our School of Music because it's usually high school teachers that are teaching music that are taking this class in the summer. And so we look at this as a way to make it more affordable, get more instructors in here. They're the people that bring the music students to KU. So this is making it affordable for the teachers in the region to get that master's degree program or take those additional classes. And it's also going to bring more in, it's more likely to bring students in. So it's a dual, make it affordable and make it a recruiting tool. That's the reason for the significant increase.
So I have a question on most of these in general. Where do you get that information? How do you know you're competitive or you're off base?
So in the previous one in particular, we look at the online market and where we're competitive at. And those are placed in those tiers. Like engineering, you can be, you got to look at what the rate of competitors, University of Illinois would be like one of the parts on the engineering side. What are they charging? On this particular one, this has just been a rate that's been really prohibitively high for people to take a summer class in. And we recognize how many students we get from these people to take these classes. So that's not so much a market one, but an affordability one. The other ones, we look at our competitive set and say, where do we need to be at? And so when a program wants to do an online program, master's program, we require them to look at the competitive market, look at the cost of instruction, and figure out what to do.
I was wondering if we can, like, we have applications coming in, or students are not applying. We get feedback from the students saying, this is why, whether it is cost of living or cost of tuition. we don't get direct information from the students saying, I'm not gonna opt for coming in.
We
because of
do,
that.
we do an enrollment management and towards university, I'm sure the other universities will say similar. We do look at why people, we look at the funnel, we look at where they went at, where they didn't go, and where they came to us. So we do work to look at that.
Good discussion. Any further conversation or questions? Motion by Regent Brasker. Okay, Regent Winter, second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Regent Dyke has had to step out for just a moment, and I will need to recuse myself from the next item. So why don't we skip over item number 6? We'll come back to it and move on to item number 7. Act on request to approve program statement to construct cancer center at KU Medical Center. And we've got Ken listed here. We've got David.
We have talked about this one, I think, multiple times. You've heard one or several presentations from Dr. Jensen, our Cancer Center director. I thought I might just take a few minutes to step up a few levels and provide a bit more context for what this program really is about for a new building. And just quickly review some of the history of our Cancer Center. Dr. Roy Jensen came back to Kansas from Vanderbilt University in 2004 to become the director of our Cancer Center. At that time, we didn't have a very comprehensive program. Like many community area hospitals, we had cancer patients and some cancer research, but it was not a huge focus area. Since 2004 and Dr. Jensen joining, it has been a very focused, high priority, significant investment area for the medical center. And we have made great progress. From that time in 2004, when he joined, we obtained National Cancer Institute designation in 2012 as a cancer center designated by the NCI, which is a significant milestone in care and research for cancer. We then set our sights on achieving comprehensive designation from the NCI, which is the next tier, highest tier possible of designation, which would put us in the same category as the leading cancer care and research institutions in the country. The MD Andersons and the Sloan Ketterings and places like that are comprehensive centers. The designation from NCI is on a 5-year rolling cycle. So when you get a designation, then you're up for renewal in 5 years. We achieved a renewal of our initial designation that was done in 2012 in 2017. And then in this past year, we received the comprehensive designation, which is a major milestone for us. Part of the activity that we have been focused on, well, many activities we have been focused on, and you must be focused on to achieve designation like that from the NCI, include prevention programs, assessment programs, significant research programs, and significant clinical care, patient care programs. And all of those must be advanced and very well done, or you don't get an NCI designation. We're very fortunate and very proud of the fact that we have now achieved a comprehensive designation. One of the things that we have known for some while now that we need to do is improve our facilities. Today and historically, we have been spread across multiple buildings across our campus. And that was noted actually by the NCI review board in our last designation. And they made a very strong point to suggest that we need to consolidate as much as we can into one or several buildings. And so we have been working on this, conceptualizing and planning this building for many years now. And what we're proposing here and the program that you have seen and that we're requesting approval for today is a significant increase in improvement to our facility infrastructure on campus for cancer. The building that we're proposing that we have programmed right now is a little over 200,000 square feet. I think it's 213, I think, approximately, at an estimated cost of $250 million. That is for the research component of our new infrastructure in buildings. The clinical patient care component, which is being proposed and being worked by our health system partners on campus, is a similar size and similar cost building. We don't have exact estimates on that yet, but we're actively working on that. And this will either be literally one building or two connected buildings nearby, depending on how the geography works out and some other considerations of existing resources we have. But this will significantly improve our ability to conduct research on the university side. And it will be connected with the patient care clinical side of the health system. And that is state of the art in modern cancer research and care. And so this building is a huge initiative for us to continue this pathway that started nearly 20 years ago, was the objective of which was to significantly improve research and ultimately patient care for cancer victims throughout the state of Kansas and our entire region. And we're very proud of the fact that we are now in the club of the top tier cancer centers in the United States. We are actively involved in clinical trials sponsored either by us or others throughout the nation. We participate in clinical trials sponsored by the NIH or NCI, and we want to continue to advance our program in this building as a critical element of that. So that's what this is sort of all about. If you take it into a little bit bigger context, it isn't just a building at a moment in time. It's a building in a pathway that we've been on for several decades and on which we have made a significant amount of progress. So that's what we're proposing today. This program plan, if you approve this, then we will continue with detailed design work, and we will start the process of selecting a construction firm to work with our design firm to develop the details of how this building will be put together. That's what the question is before us. And so I would propose and solicit your support in allowing us to continue. I'm happy to answer any questions about the program if you have them, but I didn't think maybe that was as much what you might want to do here.
Questions for David? Would entertain a motion to approve the question or a motion?
Question.
Sure.
David, I want to go backwards a little, make sure I understand. So the request at this point is $250 million structure.
Correct.
And all of that will be research.
Correct.
And so all of the operational cost of that will be on the university.
Correct.
And to tell us what you expect or what the hopes are with respect to the clinical, the hospital part.
Sure. The hospital, and we're working very closely with the health system on this. So this is not like we're doing our thing and they're doing their thing and someday we'll get together. We're, jointly designing and developing these plans together for both components. But the health system's primary focus is on patient care. And so their work on their part of the building is associated with all the elements that one has to do to provide care to patients. That is different from research. And so the university's focus is on research elements. And let me qualify slightly the first question you asked, Regent Meyer. It is, our building is all about research. It does include a significant component of a vivarium, which is an animal facility for maintaining and supporting colonies and animals that are used for research. So that's a significant component, but it's related to research. So the health system's focus is on patient care. University's focus is on research. Those things come together in a very significant way in what are called clinical trials or clinical research, where someone has cancer, the standard of care may not work real well, and so we're testing new things all the time, drugs or other devices or other medical technologies. And that is both a clinical and a research thing. And those are together, brought together. And the concept of this building is to have very tight literally tight connections between the clinical elements of cancer and the research elements of cancer in one building or connected. So
I'm still a little confused. It's correct that the entire building, the $250 million building, is for research.
yes,
And you mentioned the hospital being involved in some of the plans. If the building is for research, what's the hospital involved in? Is there-
patient care.
I understand that. It's the same building. So this building is going to be only for research, not the hospital.
The program that we are proposing here, requesting support for, is a university program that is focused on research. So that's correct, what you can say. The health system is developing its plans. We are working with them on those plans as they are working with us on the research plans for a significant component of new building infrastructure that will be patient care. And so if you think of, this is not the design of the building, but if this were a building, a portion of the building is patient care, a portion of the building is research. The university proposal and the program that we're proposing here is for the research elements of that. The health system will have clinical components, patient care components of that in that same. Sorry?
Vicinity?
Yeah, very much. Either literally in the same building or buildings that are highly connected. So if they were subject to KBOR approval, they would be bringing a proposal for a clinical program for their portion of this new infrastructure. They're not, so they won't. But if they were, that's what they would do, and we would be arm in arm with them proposing this, what we are proposing here, which is the research elements.
So the $250 million building that you're asking for approval for does not at this point involve use by the hospital.
Not directly, except with respect to clinical research, where we will be doing research or clinical trials for patients of the health system who are, being treated in the clinical side of the building.
So the hospital studying this, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when they get done with their studying, is it likely that they'll build an addition to the building or a different building, or how's that going to work?
The intent and the plan is that we will be building our buildings together, but very likely with one construction firm. We've already selected the same architectural design firm. And so we're actively designing with the same firm, the research elements, and at the same time, the clinical elements. And when we build the building, it will be built as a project.
I think the point is it's only our share of the cost.
Yeah, it's only our share of the cost, but it is a building that will be focused on, the health system components will be focused on the clinical side, ours on research.
So what's the anticipated cost of the entire structure, of the research part plus the hospital?
We don't have a real good estimate at this moment. They're a little bit behind. The health system is a little bit behind in the staging and the sequence of this, but it will be, I think the estimate is approximately the same amount, $250 million for the clinical component, which would make it a $500 million building.
And will the university proceed with its $250 million portion of the building without the involvement by the hospital?
Mm-hmm. Well, we are already actively involved. So no, we are not proceeding independent of or separate from the health system. We intend to proceed together on this.
I asked that question because I understood that they're sort of behind.
Well,
where
behind
you are
a month, maybe. And it's not
okay.
It's not like 3 years.
Doing this in lockstep as partners, but you have different governance.
Correct.
So they'll go to their own.
They'll go to their board, and they will have to have in accordance with their governance structure, they will have that reviewed by their board. We are obviously subject to Board of Regents review, and so it's a little bit of an artificial separation because they are together, but we're governed separately. So that's why ours is only including here, university side.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions related to AU Medical Center proposal. Great project, obviously. We do.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Regent Dykus, second by Regent Nebraska. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, we'll back up now to item number 6, act on amendment to the board's tuition assistance policy.
Thank you. On page 133, I want to show thanks to Jillian Miller, our former general counsel, who helped work on this project. This is some time and effort was taken to basically bring board policy up to speed on where we're at with some unique approvals that have been granted by the board to several of our campuses with regard to allowing the university to designate who might be eligible for tuition assistance. So if you are an employee of a state university, you can continue your studies, and then extending that to spouses and dependents of university and board office, faculty and staff. And this is, of course, a tremendous benefit for recruiting and retaining staff. It is a great benefit to have, and we are just basically bringing everything up to what we've basically been doing, but trying to make sure board policy is consistent with practice.
Any questions or discussion? And given that my wife is a professor at Pittsburgh State University, I will be recusing myself from this vote. But if there aren't any questions or discussion, would entertain a motion to approve.
It would be a special.
It may also be a student.
I move to approval.
Okay, motion by Regent Winter,
Second.
by Regent Dykus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Be part of the housing program.
Not voluntarily. Believe that motion carried. All right, move on now to item number 8. Act on request to amend the fiscal year 2024 capital improvement plan. Project plan, approve a statement to construct a new residence hall and dining facility at Kansas State University, Aerospace and Technology Campus in Salina, and act on request to seek legislative bonding authority by Kansas State.
Also known as K-Fake Salina, is requesting an additional 55,000 square foot residence hall, bringing additional capacity for about 267 students onto the campus, along with a new dining facility, about a 12,000 square foot dining facility that can serve up to about 600 students. So there has been significant steady growth of enrollment at K-State Salina. The housing capacity there has been at max capacity the last 5 years. One of the things that they're seeing is from prospective students an interest in coming and attending K-State Salina. However, they've had to turn them away potentially because there isn't availability of housing on the campus. There is also some significant additional new programs coming in, the K-AIRS facility, which we anticipate will also bring some additional excitement and enrollment there. And so when you look at the campus's projected enrollment growth plan, all the way up to about 1,000 students, the capacity and need for on-campus housing is real. And given the timeframes that it takes to construct these facilities, starting now to get through that process, hopefully will allow us to have that capacity on campus. We are seeking, obviously, then bonding authority from the board and the legislature. So about 39 million is our current projected cost. It does include a fairly healthy escalator, just in terms of the real inflationary impacts we've seen in the construction market. We want to make sure we're trying to anticipate that.
Questions or discussion for Ethan? Motion by Regent Dykus, second by Regent Nebraska. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Ethan. All right, move on now to item number 10, I believe. Act on request to amend the fiscal.
Nine.
Oh, did I skip 9? I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Back to you.
So this is
Back to
a
you.
request, obviously, for renovations of what we described earlier as historic, but not on a registry of historic. Still the housing facilities that we have. I mentioned earlier, this is the complex that we've actually held offline the last several years as we've adjusted to our enrollment numbers on the Manhattan campus. However, what we intend to do is really create this as a new concept of a really strong concept for a living learning community, focusing on our honors students. And so really trying to focus on and create a new experience for those students here at K-State. So we're looking to come back in, do some fairly significant renovations to all three of those facilities in order to be prepared for that adjustment for moving the honors program into that area. So we're seeking authority for the project. 25 million of that we anticipate coming from bonding authority, with another 7 million from private donations. In case you're curious, we did do some quick calculations in terms of our debt burden ratio. We always try to make sure we're watching that. So when you look at the potential bonding impact from this facility, as well as in case of this alignment facility, we really moved from a 4.9 to about 5. So and our goal is to keep it well below 7%. So we're staying within that debt burden capacity, which is what we're watching as an institution.
Thank you. Questions or discussion?
I see there's a private donation as well.
Yes, philanthropic donation, that's anticipated. Yeah, I was gonna say, we're open to anyone.
That's
No further discussion. We're going to take a motion to approve. Okay, motion by Regent Brasker, second by Regent Dicus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now on to item number 10. Act on request to amend the fiscal year 2024 capital improvements request and approve a revised program statement for the 11th and Mississippi Gateway project at KU. Yeah.
So thank you. This is one that when you look at the number that we're asking to amend going from 335 to 448, it's like, wow, that's a really big change. But I want to clarify that 335 number, we were thinking several years ago, and we kind of kept the number there, but we figured out what we're doing. It was really thinking about it as a football facility, So this has evolved substantially from the time that we came with that number into what we were really developing as a multi-use facility that has a significant element of conference and events in it, as we talked about earlier. That not only assists the university with housing and dining, it also will be able to accommodate soccer as well as football. There's a concept of later building in entertainment venues to have bigger development projects. So it's a facility that's used 365 days a year, or at least probably 200 days a year, not to say. Just a quick anecdote story about why this is important. Ethan and I were at the Texas Tech at the Council of Business Officers for the Big 12 recently. We're doing a tour of their athletic facilities, and they have this huge project there where they're doing one end zone, their practice facilities, and a lot of other things, $219 million project. And I went to the CFO and I go, that's a really, really big building. What's in here besides football? And she looked at me like, why would I ask that question? She goes, it's football. And my internal reaction was, well, that's sad, but I didn't say that to her. But the point is, this is meant to be a modern stadium that's multiple use. It serves not just football 8 days a year, but the university as a whole and the community of Lawrence as well. So this is a community of Lawrence asset, a university asset across campus. And if you just look at, since we put the number in, assuming it was the same thing, which it's really not, the inflation side and the square footage size puts you at a number that's in the range of what we're asking for. So this is redoing the David Booth Memorial Stadium football facility, but it's a lot more than that. And the very last time that you'll see it the way it is this coming weekend when we play K-State in the Sunflower Classic, and then immediately we're going to be getting pulling all the fiber out, all the IT infrastructure out, redoing the water and sewer, and we'll start construction, we'll start tear down this winter. But then to be open in August of 2025 for that football season. So this is a transformative project for the city of Lawrence as well as the university. And the next item you have, which is 11 coming up, is really the financing piece of that. To support that, it's got significant donor private funding going into it, and it also has $85 million of economic development money from the state related to the conference center and all the economic development opportunities that provides. So it's donor, ARPA funding, the economic development that came from the state, and then what the athletic department can support in terms of financing from the net new revenues from this facility, which are substantial when you're running a facility like we have to a new modern stadium. Revenue upside is really.
Questions for Jeff?
Is this the one which is spread across two cities, Wichita and?
I'm sorry.
For the item number 11?
Item 11 is the financing side of it.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, questions? Entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Regent Winter, second by Regent Dyke. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 11, you've already addressed it. Anything else to add?
Yeah, item 11 is using the capacity of the athletics department to finance portion of the stadium about 25%, which is relatively low. You can do a new stadium with only 25% leveraging on it. And, that's the capacity they can handle. There's a comment in there that the university may backstop it, but it's a backstopping solely for purposes of interest rate savings. The difference between a backstop and a backstop is really large in the market right now. We'll see what it is then. But it can, we have Pat Kaufman, who's on the Zoom call, who's a CFO of the athletic department. I spent a lot of time saying, what can you afford? And we won't do more than you can afford. This is a responsible financing of that. And also some refinancing of some existing private debt that has really restrictive covenants that wouldn't let us do anything. So we're going to be refinancing some debt, issuing new debt, and doing this through in partnership with Katie. So that's what this is.
Discussion or questions? Now for entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Regent Winter.
Second.
Second by Regent Brasker. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. One more item, item number 12, act on request to approve financing for the university stadium project at Wichita State.
So the bond proceeds of $11.8 million will be utilized for the construction of phase 1A and 1B University Stadium. So recommendation, the bonds will be issued by KDFA. We said that none of these annual 1.5 million Board of Trustees tax levy is associated with. This is similar to the 2014 issue. Or John Wilson, the county really source. Bonds will not be an obligation for the trustee. Wichita State Board of Trustees to approve the bond resolution. Related documents last Thursday, November 9th. The bond offering is scheduled for Tuesday, December 12th. And currently, Central County has an S&P rating AAA. Credit rating scheduled with S&P.
Thank you, Warner. Any discussion, questions? Motion by Regent Dykes. Second by Regent Brasker. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Right. Any opposed? It's a lot. Let's see. Right. Let's see. Monitor progress on the State University Capital Renewal Initiative. Chad Bristow.
look at a few points of progress on the facilities initiative. We will have the 2023 anniversary facilities report online and ready for board review in the city. And that will include relevant information like building and space inventory, facilities condition, space maintenance. It will also, it also marks a milestone really in our work with the consultant team that we've worked on space utilization and strategy, developing some new methods and tools to support the universities. And we would like to propose that consultant team address this committee in December, a short presentation, I think. Interesting to see, and also just an opportunity to demonstrate how much collaboration between the universities, board, data research and planning, and that consulting team has happened, and also highlight how that can be a benefit for the universities and the university. Over the that, I think we're going to do a presentation.
A good idea. Thank you, Jim. All right. Another standing item is audits for committee review and discussion. Do we have anything there, Elaine?
The only thing I would note for the committee, Mr. Chairman, is that legislative post audit has begun their audit of the state university's expenses for DEI and a reporting of foreign gift reporting, but not review of foreign gift reporting. And I think they're just in the early stages. I think they're still trying to decide how to define DEI. And so the more to come, but I do think they want to release that audit in February. So it's a pretty short term audit. It's not going to go on for very long.
Thank you. Questions? All right. Any other business to come before the committee this morning? It's a lot. Appreciate everybody's time and diligence. Regent Winter.
I promise this, the answer I think can be 30 seconds. Did I read that budget division acted on our request, passed it on to government?
They did. So
highlight
the next sequence of the budget cycle, now the next step has been taken. Division of the budget has sent back their recommendations to all of us, the state agencies. They basically gave us our vanilla base budget with nothing added except the corrections to the current year pay plan. We will next Monday submit an appeal to the governor, and Blake Flanders will do an on Teams appeal to budget staff and governor staff on Tuesday, the 21st, to propose that the governor add back what is requested in September.
And is the action of the budget division, is that routine? It's been quite a while since
It's very normal. They don't generally add anything on their own unless it's technical, a fix. So this is very typical of budget action.
Thank you, Elaine. All right, you have the next committee agenda or dates before you. Next agenda planning conference call is November 28th, and next in-person committee meeting will be on December 13th in Topeka. So thanks again, everybody, for their time. And with that, we are adjourned.